What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Fourth and Frames, the redraft podcast here at fantasyandframes.com and on the Fantasy and Frames podcast network. I'm your host, Jorge Edwards. And with me, I got a couple of gentlemen that I owe some thanks to for picking up the slack last week. Thank you very much for covering the show, guys. You did a great job. And of course, I'm referring to Mr. Nate Markham. How you doing, Nate?
Doing very well. Thank you very much. Tyler and I did have we felt like we were kind of Rose and I don't know the other guy's name from Titanic. I know I'm supposed to. Jack. And we were controlling the ship. And we didn't hit the iceberg this time. So the sequel to Titanic, Titanic 2, not going to drown.
Nice. And of course, the other co-host here, Tyler Heil. How you doing, Tyler?
I'm wonderful. I just want to make it clear. I was Rose. I was the one standing on the front of the ship.
Yeah. It was evident. They all knew.
So, maybe I'm asking, well, first of all, I'm definitely asking the wrong crowd here, but I've seen like the regular version and I've seen like the director's cut. And which is the one where she dies? Which is the one where she jumps in? Or does neither happen? Or it's just one or the other?
No clue.
I thought she lived in, what do you mean? Rose?
Yeah, didn't she? She's the one, she's the narrator, right?
That was how the entire movie started. She was the old lady throwing the necklace off the boat. Like, Rose didn't die.
I thought she put it on her, like wore it, and then jump into the water. Is that not a thing?
Oh, you mean like the old lady committed suicide?
That's how I remembered it. Maybe because I was trying to find something interesting about the movie.
Holy crap! That's dark, man. Let's not forget it is Suicide Awareness Month on a serious note. So
yeah,
yes. If you need any help out there, folks, do not be shy to reach out and get help. We've all been there. We all need help.
And playing the role of True Jack and Rose, by the way, I drew this for Tyler. Him on the couch. It's beautiful, by the way. These are for sale at fantasyandframes.com.
How much time did you spend?
I just did it while we were talking.
Wow, that is impressive.
It's very impressive. You even got the goatee. Did you see it?
Oh, my God. Well, with that, let's get into some news and notes from around the NFL.
I'm just going to draw for every player that we have that we talk about. I'm going to draw a caricature. My opinion of them. Sorry, I will not. Continue.
Do I look like the models in your? Yeah, exactly. In your fantasy roster, exactly. Anyhow, news and notes from around the NFL. Let's start with Trey Lance. Man, he went from slapping that dollar out of his hands with the strippers to now having all the free time to do whatever he wants because he's out for the season with a broken ankle. I don't know. Is it a Dak broken ankle or was it just a broken ankle? Because I know they said they brought out the air cast. Mm-hmm. I didn't know whether or not that meant it was something super, super serious. But in either way, it sucks for this young man. He didn't play in 2020. He didn't play in 2021, and now you're going to get another year with him not playing. So when he comes back to the 49ers, is he even guaranteed the job anymore? Do they say, let me go get somebody else? There's a lot of question marks here for this 49ers passing game. And how lucky are they to pull that deal with Garoppolo towards the end of training camp? Just to, I think if they didn't have if they had another quarterback, I think their season would be screwed. But, they have the guy who led them almost to another Super Bowl. So that's pretty good luck there for their chances this year.
Yeah, so I'm looking here, and it says that the diagnosis was that he suffered a fibula fracture and a ligament disruption. So of the two bones in your lower leg, your tibia and your fibula, the fibula is the lateral one, so the outside, the skinnier of the two. And it must have been a distal fracture closer to the ankle, of course. And so that rehab is a little better than if it had been something lower leg, mid leg that happened to go up into ligament for the knee is what they're saying. I'm far from one of the, Twitter docs, but, I played one for 12 years doing the imaging, but yeah, so fibular fracture isn't as bad, especially if it could have been a dual fracture. So it could have affected the tibia and the fibula if it went through, and that probably would have been a much more difficult rehab, usually more screws and plates adjusted, but he'll probably still have a plate on that fibula since it's such a structural bone, not real. It's difficult to manipulate and get back. So
Gotcha.
Dr.
All right,
Markham.
I know, seriously, top 4 Nate, Dr. Markham, which, by the way, congratulations, Nate Markham, top 4 back-to-back weeks, I want to say, for IDP rankings over at Fantasy Pros in the ECR competition.
You can say that. It's not accurate, but unfortunately it's not. It's total for the season, yes, is it's 5th overall, but the two are both solid enough to stay there. The first week was, the second week, or first week was not, second week was. It's getting better. Okay. There's progress.
Well, okay, so it's top 5. Sorry, not top 4, but still, that's pretty impressive. Congratulations, Nate, for all you're doing there. Let's get into Mike Evans' suspension for basically, defending his quarterback. Did you see what he said to the referees? That's Tom Brady. Yes. What did you expect me to do?
You want me to do?
Yeah, the most honest answer, and you really can't blame a guy, which is why they probably only gave him one suspension or one game suspension. Who steps up in his place? They just brought on Cole Beasley, which, say what you will about him as a person, this guy is an awesome wide receiver when he's given the opportunity. I mean, look what he did in Buffalo with Josh Allen all those years. Look what he did with the Cowboys when he was there in Dallas. Yes, for those of you who do not know that, he used to be a Dallas Cowboy. And now you're giving Tom Brady an explosive slot wide receiver. Hey, I think he's had a few of those over the course of his career, so that definitely could help him out. But for this week, Tyler, if you had to pick one of these wide receivers, Scotty Miller, Rashad Perriman, Russell Gage, anybody jumping off the map at you?
Oh, man. I feel like I'm going to look like a dummy for saying this, but I'm just going to go with Rashad Perriman. I feel like if someone's going to catch a touchdown, it's going to be him. He's tended to do that with Tom Brady when he's actually gotten the opportunity. And I still think Rashad Perriman's a relatively talented wide receiver. So, yeah, I'm going with Perriman, man.
Fair enough. The former Ravens first-round pick from back in the day. Going to the Denver Broncos here, Jerry Jeudy day-to-day, chest, shoulder, rib, basically all over. He hurts all over, like Jameis Winston said a couple weeks ago. Where's it hurt? Everywhere. It hurts everywhere. And that's unfortunate because you saw last week on Monday Night Football, for week 1, that is, him and Russell Wilson just had such a rapport. They have, of course, that touchdown catch now. Jerry Jeudy may or may not be full go this week, or if he is go, he may be limited, which means Courtland Sutton's come on down. Really, well, that's what we're hoping for, right? For those of us who have shares of Courtland Sutton. But it hasn't been clicking as much. Is there any other wide receiver here on this team that you're concerned about here for the Denver Broncos? It's either Jeudy, Sutton, or bust. Is that pretty much?
I mean, nobody has more than the only person with more than 2 targets is more than 1 target is Tyree Cleveland, who started opposite last week, essentially, with Jeudy playing more in the slot. And by the way, I thought Jeudy really came out okay because I thought he broke his collarbone. The way he was when it down was clutching right there. I'm not saying this is a positive, but it's sure better than having a broken clavicle collarbone. So, but no, it's Courtland and and Sutton, even really from the second half of week 1 through last week, he's been the rapport's been there. You could tell that first half when he didn't, I don't think he had, but maybe 1 catch, 2 targets, picked it up pretty heavy from that third quarter on.
We got a question here from Jeb Armstrong. I'm being offered Michael Thomas for Courtland Sutton. Should I accept? I wouldn't. I'd say you would take Courtland Sutton?
I would not. I would take Courtland Sutton. He's being offered Michael Thomas. So you wouldn't take Michael? You're a Michael Thomas fan.
I would take Michael Thomas, to be honest with you.
And I would take Sutton.
See, and it's interesting because we remember on the our pregame show on Sunday, my concerns with Thomas, even though I'm pro Thomas here, is that you're not going to get the receptions, you're not going to get the targets you did in previous seasons because now the Saints have more receiving options. But you know what you are getting? You're getting the touchdowns. And I know touchdowns is a sticky stat. You can't just go on, well, he got X amount of touchdowns this many weeks, therefore he's due to get more touchdowns later. Like, no, you can't say that. You can only talk about opportunity and targets. And I think the targets will come as he gets his legs under him. Of course, he's still battling that hamstring injury. He's not a fully 100%. But why Sutton for you, Nate?
A lot of that stems, number one, of lack of competition around him. I think the competition in New Orleans is twice as much as what you see in Denver. But then, and most importantly, in my opinion, is Chris Olave. Chris Olave has, as far as air yards, has really dominated. It's just he hasn't made do with those. So I think what's going to happen is that connection will happen at some point, and I think that'll just be another mouth to feed. My 2 cents. Obviously, Michael Thomas is great, but I just, I was getting ready to say the injury situation, but Cortland Sutton hasn't exactly been the beacon of health. We know that. We can talk about both of them, but again, just mouths to feed and target percentage, I think, should always be on Cortland's side. Tyler?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Cortland Sutton, and, I agree with a lot of what you said, Nate, but honestly, the biggest difference maker for me is quarterback. Yeah, like I'm just going to bet on Russell Wilson versus this would be the perfect opportunity for a drop here, Jorge, of Jameis Winston and his broken back. I need the Mike Tyson, I broke my back sound drop here.
After the glowing reception of my flex off sound drop from 2 weeks ago, I think I'm going to just hold off on doing any type of drops from here on out, at least for the foreseeable future.
All right. Well, you can at least reach out to Mike Tyson to find out if he'll do the drops for us.
Maybe I'll do like a cameo and then ask him if it's okay to use it on the podcast. We'll see. Jeb continues. It's an interesting situation. I have Javonte Williams, so I'm unsure about having a wide receiver running back stack. That's his concern. What are your thoughts on that, Tyler?
Wide receiver running back stack, I'm not overly concerned with. I don't think it limits your ceiling too much. I mean, sure, maybe it does a little bit, but I wouldn't be concerned about that. Not in a Russell Wilson-led offense. I think they're going to find their way eventually. It's always been, they were always going to have some growing pains in this offense. But when you have Russ dumping it off to Javonte and hyper-targeting Cortland Sutton, especially when other people are injured, I wouldn't worry about it too much.
There you go, Jeb. Thanks for tuning in. Next piece of news, we got Justin Herbert got rocked by your boys last week on Thursday Night Football. Right. There, Nate. Hey, take it easy. Travis Kelce also got rocked by Derwin James.
Oh my God,
that was retaliation. That was what happened. Now, do you listen to Travis and Jason's podcast?
I do not. No.
So Travis and Jason Kelce have a podcast, and they just recently, Jason brought it up to him and was like, so about old Derwin, because ironically before the game, Jason asked Travis as far as who do you respect in the league the most, who is the most dangerous, and he said Derwin, without a doubt. Guys, just this blend of speed, size, blah 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 blah. And then after the game, of course, podcast, Jason's like, so Derwin, huh? He's like, yeah, power bombed. He goes, not the first time I've been power bombed, sure as hell won't be the last. But I tell you, I made that cut, got in and realized the man who has the, who's lower wins. He goes, and I felt him wrapped around my legs. And he goes, I got in the air and he goes, I'm laughing. He goes, I'm chuckling now. He goes, because this ain't good. He goes, what goes up must come down. And he goes down, and Derwin, when he took him down, he goes, that the funniest part wasn't that. The funniest part is everybody's talking, and Derwin's the first person to come up and be like, hey bro, you okay, man? I'm sorry. And didn't even was like, so, just in the heat of it. He's like, I love that guy. He's like, we are so good. Man. It's don't even hate on him. So
was it Nasir Adderley that came in and just gave him a little extra oomph on the way down?
I don't know. I don't remember who that was. But I did see it. It was kind of like the double power bomb, and I was like, hey, we don't need both of you two. But he did. He got crushed.
I don't want to get too far into defensive players, but I always knew Derwin James is a big guy. I saw him run Noah Gray out of bounds at one point during that game, because I haven't had the opportunity to watch a lot of Chargers games live, and obviously Derwin's been injured. I'm like, who the hell is that linebacker? He's huge. I'm like, oh my God, it's Derwin James.
Yeah, look at the picture if you can find it, of Derwin basically, of when he's middle, he's got him in the air, and you can see it's like from the side angle, and there's the image itself is the best because it actually shows Derwin's thigh, and That was JC Jackson that came in that gave him the
Okay.
added little oomph. But so here, I wonder if I can
Yeah, I'll
share
put
this
it.
picture. If I can share, let's go to.
You'll be able to see it on YouTube, folks.
Oh yeah, that's right. I'll draw a picture for everybody too.
Do I look like the girls in your photos, Jack?
It's here now. Granted, it's probably a terrible video since it's such a smaller picture.
Oh man,
Does that
Man,
help?
I mean,
Look at that.
you thought AJ Dillon was Mr. Quadzilla. Look at Derwin James here. This is impressive.
Shocker that professional athlete has large muscles in the ears.
I wonder if Derwin will come on and let us admire his glutes some more.
Yes, exactly.
Well, that's the selling point. What you just said right there. That's going to get him on the show now.
I'll draw you, Derwin. I'll draw you. Let me draw you. That's not creepy enough. He's never. No one's coming on anymore.
Not one bit. No. Yeah. So Justin Herbert cert, obviously, which it's interesting that it's rib cartilage, and I think earlier this week I saw that was it Tyrod Taylor is officially going to start suing the Chargers doctor who punctured his lung. So interesting the timing there.
Can't believe you didn't already.
Right?
No
Yeah. So we have how's this impact? I personally don't think that Justin Herbert's going to be missing any games. To be honest with you, I think he'll just take it easy this week, and they'll put that wrap on that they have for players, and then he'll just go out and do his thing. Keenan Allen missed last week. Mike Williams, balled out in his place. But today there was reports that Keenan Allen was seen doing positional drills, so that's good. Eckler, Palmer, if Allen is out again this week, Palmer is definitely a good play. Eckler, obviously, you're starting. Gerald Everett.
Ooh.
Right?
Yeah.
Just back-to-back weeks, double-digit fantasy points and half PPR scoring. He and Justin Herbert like each other a lot because the targets are there for the tight end position. So good for him. Going over now to Indianapolis, Michael Pittman back at practice today. Now, did he do a full practice or was he also doing individual drills? Does anybody know that off the top of their head? If they don't, it's not a big deal.
I don't. I can fact check it though.
All right. Well, the fact is he was back at practice, which is great signs here for the Colts. Because good Lord, they looked atrocious with that. I mean, you got blanked out by Jacksonville. That's not a good sign right there. No. Speaking of getting blanked out, one area of fantasy football that I can tell you probably will not get blanked out if you give it a try and you have some common sense, and that is some over and under props over at Underdog Fantasy. If you use the promo code Fantasy and Frames, you get a 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. Literally, it's a game. You pick 5 props over under, and it's really not that hard, folks, to be honest with you. I mean, I say that, right? And I'm not rolling in the millions of dollars, right? So I can't really say too much about it. But I think a lot of people tend to overthink things when it comes to DFS. Give it a shot. There's plenty of games you can choose from. You dictate how much you want to spend, and besides the weekly best ball matchups, there's a lot of cool things to do over at Underdog Fantasy. So give it a try. Use the promo code Frames. And with that, let's get into some plays and fades as we do every week now. We're going to give you at each position on offense a player that we're high on and a player that we're low on. So we're going to be jumping all around between all of us because our show sheet is literally jumping around between all of us. So it's going to be pretty fun to a little behind the scenes action here. Let's talk about quarterbacks, and I'll start us off with a player that I'm pretty amped up about, and that's Marcus Mariota. Marcus Mariota almost led a 28-3 comeback versus the Los Angeles Rams, if that's pretty funny, if you think about that in the history with the Atlanta Falcons. Week 1, again, very efficient on the ground as well as throwing the ball. 19.8 fantasy points last week against the Rams, 15.4 going against the Seattle team, where the rushing upside is going to be there for him again. I'm not expecting a win for the Atlanta Falcons, so look at the garbage time to be there for him, kind of like it had always been in Tennessee. So start Marcus Mariota there. Nate, who do you got for a play for the week?
At running back position?
Sure.
So Jorge, that was last week's.
Yep.
Nate's play from last week. We did a little accountability here, and we listed Nate's quarterback play from last week, who was Tua Tagovailoa. If you haven't heard, he did pretty well last week.
Yeah. I mean, if you guys want to talk about that being the play of the week, and and maybe my DFS stack of him, Tyreek, and Jalen Waddle maybe played decently well. I think it could have made some people some money. And a lot of that, ironically, was because, feasted on a secondary that was beat up. And it's odd to think that it's Baltimore secondary that we're going to start beating up on. But that was the case last week. And, I wonder if that's going to be the case going forward. And, it's hard to determine this early just because, you saw some big plays out of some Marcus Williams primarily. But when Brandon Stevens was out there, which he wasn't out there for long, what does this mean for Mac Jones this week? That's the question. Is as bad as Mac Jones has been, does a visit by the Baltimore Ravens actually benefit him? I mean, is that a crazy statement to actually make, you guys? Do either one of you two? It's not my start of the week necessarily, but I think it's an interesting pivot considering how bad Baltimore has been against opposing quarterbacks.
Go ahead, Tyler.
I don't think there's any situation where I will ever be excited to start Mac Jones.
I don't blame you.
I don't care who he's playing. So
it's terrible. The play calling's bad. There's no weapons that excite me. I mean, Jacoby Myers is fine occasionally here and there.
But he's hurt. He's hurt now, or at least he's being hurt now. Yeah.
I just waiver claimed him at multiple leagues, and then boom, knee injury.
Right, exactly. Thanks a lot, Tyler. You jerk. Tell you, if you want, as far as someone outside the top 12, again, I'm intrigued. Intrigued is the right name, and Jimmy Garoppolo. Personally, I think that it's odd to say that the whole season and the hype was huge towards towards Lance, but here's a Broncos team, without Pat Surtain potentially, without Justin Simmons, and despite good results, the Broncos defense really was aided by bad wide receiver play from Seattle and Houston. I mean, look at this. So Seattle in week 1, Houston week 2, both had 11 drops from their receivers. Makes you wonder if they had completed even just half of those, what that impact would have been towards the total defense allowed. And Jimmy G didn't look, like a world beater, but I got to tell you, he had 8.4 yards or 8.4 ADOT, which is one of the highest he's had in his career. So that was a potential. That's the 14th highest of any quarterback so far in the season. And the 49ers have the 11th highest implied point total, according to Vegas lines at 23.25 with an over under of 45. There's a chance that Jimmy G sneaks out a very serviceable for a QB 22 ranking right now. Mm-hmm. I think there's a decent chance he could finish inside that top 15. Right now, there's a few names: Ryan Tannehill versus Vegas. Jorge, Jimmy G or Tannehill? Let's test your
Jimmy G.
Attaboy. There it is. We got to do it.
Yeah.
This is 2 years in the making. I've been just waiting for the slow play.
Well, speaking of another quarterback that I kind of am excited about this week, give it up for Jared Goff.
Yeah.
Washington. He really went off, and now he's going against a Vikings team that's going to be playing not in prime time. So therefore, Kirk Cousins should have a field day or a bounce back game. And of course, these two offensives, running game check, wide receivers check, tight ends check for the Vikings. If you saw Irv Smith getting targeted a lot on Monday Night Football, Hawkinson still to be determined. But in other case, it's good. It's looking good for Jared Goff this week. Tyler, if you had to fade one quarterback this week, who would you fade? And let's make it easier in the sense of chances are, folks, you're starting your stud quarterback. But if you're playing in a super flex league, for example, I wouldn't touch Baker Mayfield going against New Orleans. I just feel like that's just a horrible matchup written all over it. Who would you want to fade as your QB2?
So I will say that regardless of rushing upside, I think it's kind of absurd to have Justin Fields at the QB 17.
Agreed.
Hey,
Mhm.
there are a lot of players behind him that I would play him over. So I think I can confidently say that I will be fading Justin Fields this week.
Would you play Cooper Rush versus the Giants over Justin Fields with the returning Michael Gallup? Which
Is it? Wait, is it happening?
I think it's looking like he's going to play this week on Monday Night Football.
Oh my God. Wow. Well, you just made my day, Jorge. You know what? Screw it. I'll play Cooper Rush, man.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in the Bears. You show me. I will not start any Bears except for David Montgomery until I see something.
Right. Fair enough. All right, let's go to the running back position. Nate, what do you got for us this week?
We just talked about Chicago Bears, not David Montgomery, team they're playing, Houston Texans. I know it's been Damian Pierce has been pretty polarizing, ups and downs. Week 1 was horrendous. It was Rex Burkhead day. Week 2, we saw Damian Pierce, kind of monopolize that backfield. And if we're all right from what we've seen, if 2 weeks is enough to tell us that the Chicago Bears will not move the ball, when they have fewer passing attempts and Cooper Kupp has receptions on the season, that, and it's not just a product that they don't want to throw the ball. It's a combination of both. They don't want to throw the ball and they can't do anything else offensively. That tells me it should be a pretty high offensive snap count for Houston. Chicago has been pretty susceptible on the ground, against opposing running backs. So that's an area of, if there's any buildup, they've allowed 24.4 and full point scoring, 256 yards rushing on the season they allowed, which is the 5th highest in the NFL. And Damian Pierce, despite the thinking after week 1 that Rex Burkhead was going to control all the targets, we're starting to see that shift of Damian Pierce catching the ball. I'm still being cautious. I'm not going to jump on this Damian Pierce, I told you so bandwagon. But it is optimistic to see that each week, it's getting a little bit better. I know the targets were still not there yet, but in the routes run percentage, that's gone up, and I think the targets should follow soon.
Fair enough. So if that's your play of the week, who's got a fade for the week?
I'll jump in. Can I jump into wide receiver?
Do whatever you want.
All right.
Whatever you want this week.
Yeah. All right. We're just playing it loosey-goosey here. All right. So I am going to fade as, I don't want to because it doesn't go along with a good narrative, but I'm going to fade Christian Kirk at the Chargers. First of all, they're playing the Chargers. That J.C. Jackson has another week to be healthy. Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack are looking like King Kong and Godzilla on the outside. And then you throw in Kyle Van Noy, who's actually a pretty good rusher. I just don't think it's going to make for a wide receiver 14 week for Christian Kirk, which is what his current Fantasy Pros ECR is. You get a few weeks. You get a few weeks in the NFL before these defenses say, okay, all you want to do is throw the ball to Christian Kirk. We're not going to do that anymore. Mm-hmm. And I trust Brandon Staley to be a little ahead of the curve on that and shut that down early. So I love Christian Kirk. I love what he's doing with the Jags. I'm still optimistic about him the rest of the season. I don't love this Chargers matchup where, they're playing that aforementioned defense and they're going from Jacksonville all the way across the country to LA. I don't like that matchup at one bit.
Yeah, if you want to go a step further, like I said, the unknown name or the untalked about name is Bryce Callahan. Bryce Callahan, as far as a slot cover, has been phenomenal. That was the whole, last week against the Chiefs. Everybody kind of expected somebody in the slot to try to take advantage of that one-on-one matchup, and Mahomes wouldn't even look Callahan's way. He was targeted one time. And so I think that he's very underrated. We look at last year, and it was a down year, but this year, as far as, corners go, he is, if I'm not mistaken, he was 25th. Yeah, he's 25th ranked in the NFL in coverage grades right now through PFF. So he's allowing a, 6.3 passer rating against. So I don't think 6.3 is good from what I understand. Jorge, fact check that for me.
Check. Fact.
Bad.
Gotcha. Yeah. So yeah, great call on that. Avoid.
Let me go to a running back here that I'm fading this week, and that's Raj Stevenson. This may not be related to a player I'll be hyping up a little bit later, but whatever we thought was going to happen this offseason, like, oh, well, he's going to take that next step. He's going to supplant Damian Harris. Nope. That ain't happening, especially not after last week. So fade Ramondre Stevenson this week. Who's got a play for a wide receiver that you are confident about?
You know, I went fade for wide receiver. I'll go play for wide receiver. And Jorge, you might like this one, but it's going to be Curtis Samuel against the Eagles. Curtis Samuel has done a good job of reminding us that when he is healthy and he is on the field, he is a very good player. And man, I was updating this app on my phone, and it somehow autocorrected Darius to Saris. So I don't know what that means, but yeah, we watched Darius Slay have a really good week against the Vikings in prime time, and you know, Kirk Cousins in prime time doesn't help anything, but he had a really good week against Justin Jefferson. I think they're going to have Darius Slay keying on Terry McLaurin, which is a lot of the reason Curtis Samuel has been as effective as he has this year. Defenses are keying on their number one offensive weapon, which they should be. And that's leaving Curtis Samuel a lot of opportunity in the pass game and in the run game. He's still getting about 4 attempts per game. So I like Curtis Samuel against the Eagles this week with Darius Slay focusing on Terry McLaurin.
Very nice. I'll go to the tight end position to round us off here. And I mentioned his name a little bit earlier, Irv Smith versus the Lions. The Lions are giving up the 10th most fantasy points to the position. Look, as somebody who needed Adam Thielen to come through in the clutch on Monday Night Football so that he didn't lose to his sister-in-law, needless to say, I was very disappointed this week, and I still have not stopped hearing it from her. So you saw the target distribution go towards Irv Smith this week or last week. He had that touchdown that he should have caught. It was a beautiful pass, but one of the few that Kirk Cousins made on Monday Night Football. So I think you're seeing the signs of this offense wanting to incorporate the tight end in the receiving games, in this case, Irv Smith. Fade this week, and I don't know if this is kind of like an understatement or kind of like a known thing right now, but when I saw this stat, I was really, really blown away. Albert O versus the 49ers. Wasn't he supposed to be something like amazing heading into this season? Can you guys correct me if I'm wrong here?
Yeah, not for me.
I was not on the I mean, I followed the narrative. I understood that the production should be better with old Russ at the helm. Maybe it can still get that way, but I don't know. I think tight end is uglier this year than it's ever been.
Well, the Broncos are going against a 49ers team that are allowing on the season 1.6 fantasy points to the tight end position. If that doesn't scream avoid, I don't know what will. And now that we've gone through that, we're going to do something a little bit different this week. I know we don't really do our flex offs, but we're having creative discussions about getting you folks out there the information that you really want, that you need to set your lineups and make those trades and work the waiver wire. So we're just going to call this segment for this week segment. I know, very original.
Oh,
I like it.
It just tells you everything you need to know. And so let's go with this segment and talk about the quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end positions. We're going to give you players that we're confident in, and we're going to tell you why. And without further ado, let's get into the quarterback. Nate, who you got first?
I mean, man, after discussing every positive play from the last little plays and fades, it kind of narrowed that scope outside the top 12 really, in that Cooper Rush made a perfect sense. I thought that was a great potential play. The Giants, no pass rush. The secondary we've seen with, Julian Love's been the bright spot there, but the linebackers haven't been anything. I mean, granted, I don't know if they're regretting letting Blake Martinez go yet, but I can tell you the fact that they have to bring Julian Love down in the box and play as a linebacker probably was not by design. So I do like Cooper Rush in that matchup. And like I talked earlier, I do think personally that Jimmy G is another solid matchup in a game that on paper doesn't necessarily looks can be deceiving. If you have, obviously, I'm recommending as a super flex to start Cooper Rush or Jimmy G. Gross.
Nice. Tyler, do you have anybody off the top of your head that you're just super confident in this week, or just confident in this week?
You already mentioned him, Jorge. I'm really liking Jared Goff in this Lions offense. He has weapons all around him. They're scheming up this offense really well. And Jared Goff's always been a guy that can succeed when everything around him is moving in the right direction. And I think at least right now, with DeAndre Swift still on the field and Amon-Ra St. Brown absolutely going scorched earth, everything is going in the right direction for Jared Goff.
Well, he is the sun god after all.
Sure.
You know, with Detroit too, the one area that Minnesota would control in a normal game is that pass rush. And Detroit's offensive line, despite having some, gelling situation earlier on, that line's still going to be great. Frank Ragnow's back, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this week. And so they should have that offensive line intact. I need to check on Ragnow before I start saying that and spewing out bad information. But no, it's crazy that we have so many positives outside the ECR 20. That's a good week for quarterbacks, if you ask me.
Absolutely. Let's get into the running back position now. I'll go with a player that I'm pretty high on, ECR 27.5 PPR scoring. I was alluding to him earlier. I'm talking about Damian Harris of the Pittsburgh Steelers, the New England Patriots, who just took on the Pittsburgh Steelers on the season. He has 24 rushing attempts to Ramondre's, I want to say 8, which is kind of telling. Last week he dominated the snaps and rushing attempts here for the New England Patriots. Patriots aren't passing the ball; they're running the ball. Damian Harris has the 8th best elusive rating per PFF. The Ravens are giving up the 17th most fantasy points to opposing running backs. Which, okay, what is that number? It's 18.6. So if we're looking at the snap percentage that Damian Harris is getting compared to Raj Stevenson, you're looking at a pretty good RB2 situation here for you this week for Damian Harris.
Quick question for you.
Yeah, go for it.
The devil's advocate. Baltimore's points against from the running back position primarily comes through the air, though, if I'm not mistaken, at least in one major game against the Jets when they threw, if I'm not mistaken, nearly 20 times to the running back position. Wouldn't that benefit Ramondre a little bit more?
It would, except I'm looking at last week. I'm looking at the usage. I think week 1 you saw them try to do a split between these two guys, and for whatever happened, it just basically negated their performances. I want to say you saw both of these guys get around 5 points in fantasy speaking. And then you look at what happens last week. They committed to one running back. You saw the effectiveness. He was getting targeted as well as getting those rushing attempts, and you didn't see a lot from Ramondre last week. Like I said, for whatever reason, they are – well, I know the reason. He's playing really well. The Patriots are sticking to this running game. They have the 4th best offensive line in terms of run blocking, according to Pro Football Focus. You know what they're going to do. They're going to try and beat you with the running game and beat you with their defense. And very conservative offense, but at least you know what you're getting with Damian Harris.
Yeah.
What about another running back?
That makes sense, by the way. If you want a little bit of a pat on the back, I think a lot of listeners and myself included, if I had just looked at that and saw what I saw, which is a lot of receptions, a lot of PPR points going to the running back, but yeah. I mean, why would you not go Damian Harris? What did he do to possibly not keep enough of the workload from last year? And I know Ramondre is the more exciting player, but I mean, he was a stud. So here's a play. It's pretty deep. I think last week he was probably higher ECR, let down. So after the first 3, maybe 4 plays of the game, he was on pace to just absolutely have a running back 1 week, running back 2, maybe at worst. And that's Nyheim Hines. Started off electric and then didn't do shit for the rest of the time. He didn't. He just went, radio silent. This week could be different. It's against my Chiefs. I know. And, hey, surprise, surprise. If you're a Jonathan Taylor owner, the Chiefs are actually solid in rushing yards allowed. They're 8th right now. That tackle, that linebacking core, and that front 4, and even the safeties are designed to stop the run now, which is so far removed from what it had been historically. The Chiefs had been you're going to run all over them. They're going to give up chunks of yards. Then they're going to, bend, not break at the goal line. And if they do break, well, they're going to score in 5 plays against you and let you do the same thing again. Not this week, not this year. So, a lot of that maybe is a product of teams playing catch up. I don't know, but what they aren't great so far from what I've seen, stopping pass catching backs. And that's with Willie Gay. Willie Gay is a great, run stop or pass stopper as far as in coverage. Problem is there's no Willie Gay. He's out for 4 weeks. And if you look at that, even with Willie Gay, mind you, who is fast sideline to sideline, good in coverage. They allowed the most receptions allowed in the NFL to the running back position and the 3rd most receiving yards to the running back position with Willie Gay. Now they don't have him. Now Leo Chanel probably steps in. They maybe bring in Brian Cook, a safety, to step into the line of scrimmage. And I think one of the areas that the Colts can do is they can spread it out to the running back, to Nyheim Hines, get to the wings, and try to beat KC to the sideline and take advantage. And it wouldn't shock me to see him targeted, 8, 9, maybe double-digit times. It really wouldn't. I think Nyheim Hines could easily be that RB2 upside at an ECR 43.
Very nice, very nice. Let's go to the wide receiver position. And Tyler, you mentioned him earlier. I tried to bite my tongue as best as possible. Coincidentally, also ECR 27 for wide receivers. Curtis Samuel. Look, I think we all saw on Monday just how potent this defense for Philadelphia is. A lot of us were picking them in terms of like a team DST as somebody that you want to. Which, by the way, if you're playing in fantasy leagues that have team or defense special teams, I'm sorry, but they're good. I'm not going to tell you how to play. I'm just going to tell you my feelings towards the situation, which is I'm sorry. I hope you give IDP a shot. Just throwing that out there. Why? Because they got Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat, who are the primary pass rushers here for this Philadelphia Eagles team. Josh Sweat has been tearing it up with a 22.6 win percentage against his offensive lineman blocks. Look, this revenge game that Carson Wentz is hoping that he has, that's not happening. I feel like this is going to be a very low-scoring affair for Washington, unlike the previous weeks. This defense is pretty awesome. And therefore, with this pass rush that's so formidable for the Philadelphia Eagles, he's going to have to get the ball out really quickly. Enter Curtis Samuel in the slot. Probably be lining up against Javonte Maddox, who in week 1 versus the Lions allowed a passer rating of 107.6. This past week, a passer rating of 57. But come on, let's throw that out. That was Kirk Cousins on Monday Night Football. He was, they could make Ray Charles look amazing. Like Kirk Cousins could make Ray Charles look like Deion Sanders playing the defensive back position. So,
did you hear Ray Charles in a basketball game attending yelled brick when I think it was like Scottie Pippen or George. Someone was shooting. I think LeBron was shooting and he yelled brick as he was shooting. And someone was on the sideline like, how the hell do you know? I need to find a better story. But yeah, that really happened. And then I don't know. Sorry, Ray Charles stories. Yeah. That whole odd, like, is Ray Charles actually blind? Is so fascinating. If you go and start looking at things where like there's so many coincidences where I know his senses are heightened, but it's odd.
Yeah, so it's not a fluke with Curtis Samuel. Week 1, 11 targets, 8 receptions, 55 yards and a touchdown, got you 15.2 points. Week 2, 9 targets, 7 receptions, 78 yards, plus the 21 yards rushing, 19.4 points. I said it on the pregame show this past Sunday, Nate, and Tyler, you guys are both there. I called him a gadget player. I said I needed to see more. Okay, done. Check. I've seen more. I've seen Carson Wentz really likes this guy. So, given how poor other matchups will be for this offense for Washington at the wide receiver position, give me all the Curtis Samuel this week. What about you, Tyler? You got a wide receiver for us?
Man, you know what? If I'm picking one, if I'm looking down beyond the top 24 wide receivers, one guy that really interests me, and I don't know if this is necessarily a season-long play, but it could be a DFS play, is Brandon Ayuk.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah, you got Jimmy G. I did not think Brandon Ayuk was going to have a good fantasy year with Trey Lance. He just wasn't, especially if George Kittle came back healthy, which apparently he is practicing again. I remember them saying that Kittle's injury is going to be a 3-week injury. So we'll see if he comes back. We know Kittle likes to push the limits on that a little bit.
Breaking news. He's hurt again. I'm sorry. Continue.
Wait, what?
I'm joking. I'm joking.
Okay. That is absolutely something that could happen.
Yeah, no kidding.
Exactly. That's why I said that's outside the realm of possibility. I'm sorry.
Right.
George Kittle was filming for a Chunky Soup commercial and dropped the can on his toe, and he will now be out 2 months.
My gosh.
Yeah, Brandon Ayuk is a very talented wide receiver with a quarterback that I think is going to be more willing to uncork some deep balls this year. Because do either of you think Jimmy G really has a lot to lose this year?
Absolutely not.
I mean, I feel like his stock is pretty steady, and all he's going to do is increase it if he's more willing to just go for it and chuck this ball down the field. So I'm gonna take a shot on Brandon Ayuk this week.
And you notice that the rapport between Garoppolo and Ayuk increased as the season went on last year, when everybody was down on Ayuk because he was in the quote unquote Shanahan doghouse. But so that's I'm right there with you with Brandon Ayuk there. Side note: if Garoppolo leads them to the NFC Championship again, do they sign him to a long-term deal, or do they just still say Trey Lance is the guy?
So here's the thing. Am I vindictive, or is he vindictive in that I would 100% take their money, because he's getting $250 extra, $250,000. So let's start with his base salary. He was making $25 million, cut it down to 6.6.5 when he agreed to stay. We know that's a huge pay cut. Of course, he's not going to make up the $19 million difference. Right. But each time now, all he has to do is play 25% of snaps. He's definitely going to do that, and he gets an extra $250, and then $100,000 for every win. So I would try to win as many games, take all the extra money that, granted, San Fran's still not hurting. They're making money still in this, if you want to call it that. And I'd leave and go somewhere else if I could. I would go if I think Seattle will have a first pick, so I wouldn't go there. But, I think you can find a spot to go to personally and stick it to San Francisco, if you ask me. That's what I would do. Yeah.
And, if the Giants are looking for some stability at that position, that's a good one. Yeah. It wouldn't be a terrible fit for them.
Interesting. Let's round out the show talking about the tight end position. And, call me biased all you want, but I'm going to stick with the Washington Commanders here, and I'm going to go with the tight end who 2020 was playing like the tight end one in fantasy football with Alex Smith. Last year he missed, basically the entire season with the exception of like 2-3 games. In those games, he was getting you double-digit fantasy points. He was a top 12 tight end, high upper echelon, top 12 tight end. I'm trying to hype up the tight end position as best as I can. But I'm talking about Logan Thomas, the ECR 12 right now, week 1, 6 targets, 45 yards. Here's the thing: 15 yards per reception. Carson Wentz pushing the ball downfield. Got you 6 points, though. Well, why? Because everybody else was getting points, and therefore they didn't really need him. He was coming back from an ACL injury, kind of like slowly moving him back into a rotation. Last week, 5 targets, 37 yards, 12.8 yards per reception, 11.2 fantasy points. He's getting healthier. The Eagles are giving him actually the 9th most fantasy points to the tight end position. As long as he's also the tight end 14 in yards per route run. I'm all on board this. He has the quarterback to push it downfield. You're looking for upside when you don't have a top 4 tight end. You want somebody who's going to get the yardage and also get the touchdowns. And like we said earlier, you can't really use touchdowns as a sticky stat in terms of predicting future output. So yardage is a good one. Consistency in that is a good one. And Logan Thomas, through the first 2 weeks of the season, he's somebody that's probably still on your waiver wire that if you're in need of a tight end could definitely help you out. And we look back to previous seasons when they've taken on the Eagles. Yes, I know it's different coaches. Yes, I know it's different systems, but he's always had their number whenever they played in terms of getting into the end zone. So, yeah, I would go and see if you have Logan Thomas available if you're hurting at tight end and just slide him into your starting lineup this week.
All right, so here you go, Jorge. Let me put this one to the test. I think I know what your answer is going to be, but I have a league where I have the market on mediocre tight ends cornered.
Ooh, okay.
So I have a league. This is Dynasty, obviously, where I have Dawson Knox, I have Zach Ertz, I have Logan Thomas. Who are you playing?
Wait, who's the first one?
Dawson Knox at the Dolphins, Zach Ertz versus the Rams, Logan Thomas versus the Eagles.
Well, the Rams are by far the most challenging of all those defenses. They're second in, they're allowing 3 points to the tight end position.
So it's really Knox versus, you know what? I like, no, give me Logan Thomas. I'm going to stick with Logan Thomas. That's the guy I'm going with.
All
That's right. Nate, you're like, no.
I don't know. I have a hard time ever going against just
Josh Allen.
I do. And Buffalo, Miami's been atrocious. Granted, it's 2 games in. For them to be second in the NFL and allowing 22 points, and that's full point PPR, but still, they've allowed 200 yards and a touchdown. It's just, and it's not a bad thing because guess what? Philly's not that much better. They are in total like yardage allowed, but when it comes to the red zone, they've given up 1 touchdown. It's 2 games in. I hate using those things like they're number 1, but it's one thing if it becomes a trend. Week 5, 6 is when we start to see. That's when we can start using the Jets are terrible against the tight end like last year, but the Bengals are terrible against the tight end.
Yeah, let's get 1 or 2 divisional games in, and then we can start looking at those numbers.
Absolutely.
Well, if anybody else doesn't have a tight end that they're interested in this week, I think Dawson Knox was just given the stamp of approval by Mr. Nate Markham. So with that, let's just round up Fourth and Frames and just say thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you rate, review, and subscribe wherever it is you listen to podcasts. Stay tuned. Next, we have the Daily Fix podcast with Keith Fleming and Joe Matz talking about all your DraftKings matchups that you want to be playing this week. And then at 10 p.m., a little bit later, 10 p.m. Eastern, that is, join Nate Markham, myself, and Hollywood Titan as we finish off the power hours here at Fantasy and Frames with Shoot the Gap. So for Tyler, for Nate, I'm Jorge. We'll see you on the Fantasy Football pregame show next week. Oh my God, he's showing. For those of you who are watching, enjoy. Take it easy, everybody.
See ya.